Hey guys, what's going on? F on my pawn here, and welcome back to Character Creation Lite. Today, for this video, I'll be going over not Alchemist. I'll be going over Arcanist, which is very close to the other character that I was talking about previously. I will be going over the ins and outs like I usually do, and we'll see how things pan out. But I digress. Without further ado, let's just get into things and talk about alchemists. Well, arcanists. They're very close in between. But we're going to load up this, and we will go through effectively what an arcanist is, as well as what they are capable of, essentially. So, as you know, this was an off-brand series, and I tend to not usually elaborate into, but we're going to be using the very special commands of Toybox to start us off, as we usually do. And we're just going to respec here. Alright, we're just going to go with our typical portrait here, just to help out with the design here. And we're going to go all the way over to Arcanist here. Now, Arcanist, it is a very interesting caster because, yes, they do have advantages in the majority of their casting, but it really depends how you play them because they can be very interesting depending how you go with them. And they can open up a lot of builds if you're going that route. But I digress. We're just going to use the recommended build to start with, so that way we can access most of the things here. Otherwise, let's just see what goes down. So, to start with, we are going to go over to the base Arcanist here, and we are just going to go over each ability, and I will explain how things go. So, first and foremost, what is an Arcanist? An Arcanist is a cross between a sorcerer and a wizard, actually, which is very interesting because it has the advantages of a wizard, as well as the advantages of a sorcerer, where they have more casting. They work like a sorcerer in casting, you know, getting their casting levels up, but they do get more spells, they get more benefits overall. It's a nice, they're nice, I must admit. Coupled with the fact that they got the benefits of Arcanist exploits, which is the core of what makes them very useful, because it's augmented that can help you cast spells and all that sort of jazz. Regardless, we're going to start with the Arcanist base ability, and we're going to go with Arcanist exploits here. So currently we have, for the, setup, we have acid jets, but, basically, you're given a number of choices here. The first of the lot is probably going to be, we'll focus on acid jet to start with. Acid jet is very much like Flame Arc, it's very much like Flame Arc, Holy Water Jet, Ice Missile, Lightning Lance. It's basically the combat abilities of the Arcanist exploits. Let's start with Acid Jet, though. You can spend an Arcane Reservoir Point, which is essentially a pool that you can use to cast abilities from exploits. It's basically like having cantrips, but slightly better, which is one of the few benefits that you can get with an Arcanist. But Acid Jet is one such ability. It deals a d6 points of damage plus your Charisma modifier, which is pretty nice, plus an additional d6 every 2 levels beyond first level. The target is also sickened for a d4 of rounds if they fail a Fortitude saving throw. Now, is this a really good ability? I would say it's reasonable. Most combat weapons are going to be a d6 early on, and it's going to scale really nicely later on, especially if you add something else on top of that. It's way better than a cantrip, I will say. So if you were to go anything, I would personally suggest maybe like a combat ability from Arcanist, but that's just me rambling. It also apparently is a prerequisite for extra discoveries, which is very interesting. I'm not sure what that entails, but it might mean that you actually get more Arcanist exploits with extra discovery. So yeah, that's interesting to say. But I digress. the next one on the list is Arcane Barrier. As a swift action, if you spend a point from your Arcane Reservoir, you can be protected from harm, which gives you temporary hit points equal to your level, plus your Charisma modifier that lasts for a minute per Arcanist level, or until all the temporary hit points have been lost. This is basically a buffer for defense, I would say, which is really nice. So, if you're looking for a very special ability here that will make you a bit more tanky, consider Arcane Barrier, because this is basically a false life spell early on, which is really nice. For a swift action, no less. Each additional time per day that you use this ability, the number of Arcane Reservoir points do increase by 1, up to a maximum of 3, however. So keep that in mind as you're using Arcane Barrier. You're going to waste through a lot of points if you do use this. However, there is a mythic ability that allows you to ignore the expenditure of Arcanist exploits, I do believe. I can't say for certain how it works, but I am certain that there is a mythic feat that you can use in conjunction with the Arcanist exploits that will help you a lot. So these can theoretically be free in the future. Just keep that in mind as we're going through. Next, we have Armored Mask. If you spend a arcane point, you can give you can give yourself the illusion of mage armor, which is a cast level equal to your Arcanist level. And if you already have mage armor active, it instead treats it as Shield of Faith, which is actually really amazing. To give you a rough idea on how that would work, it's basically, say you're trying to get Barkskin, right? And you had no way of getting Shield of Faith. This would be one of the ways you could get Shield of Faith on top of, Barkskin, which I must admit I am considering Arcanist now that I'm looking at it, but that's just me rambling at this point. This is a really good spell if you're looking for, a bit of a defensive boost. And if you do already have Mage Armor, which most builds usually will if you're playing a harder difficulty, this is going to be really nice for you. Alright, next is the Dimensional Slide. This is basically just a warp, which is really nice to have if you're looking to play a bit more defensively. If you expend 1 point for your Arcane Reservoir points, you can basically warp up to your move range, I do believe. Or at least you can move into any location in close range that you can see. I do believe it's limited by your movement, but at the same time, this can be really helpful if you're looking to cheese the enemy in some sort of way. Say you're trying to kite the enemy into a certain location that won't make it easy for them to get you. This is a pretty good spell to have. But, I don't know. It's one of those abilities that it's very circumstantial, because most combats are not going to have you be in a position where you need to teleport. But at the same time, if you're a bit, reliant on being in the range, this is actually a pretty good ability to have. Because at least with this, you won't be provoking attacks of opportunity if you're trying to escape the distance. But then again, that's why 5-foot steps exists, but I'm rambling. Energy Shield. You can spend a arcane point to basically give yourself an energy resistance for 1 minute per Arcanist level. This increases by 5 for every 5 levels you possess, up to a maximum of 30. This is okay. I wouldn't say it's something that you should grab, because you can always get something like Resist Energy or Protection from Energy. And you can get those as scrolls, to be fair. So, if you're going a scroll route, I would definitely consider ignoring this one, personally. But if you're looking for something that, is going to protect you, and you don't have the Use Magic device to actually use scrolls, this might be worth your time. But again, at the same time, scrolls are just going to be way better, especially if you go to communal routes, because it's going to just be overall better. Flame Arc. This is similar to the Acid Jets, but unlike it being a target ability, this actually does a 30-foot line, and that deals a d6 of fire damage plus your charisma modifier, plus an additional... It basically works similarly to Acid Jet, but instead of sickening the enemy, it works in a 30-foot line of flame. this can be really amazing, especially against swarms of enemies, because at least this way you're attacking a multitude of groups, which can be really powerful. So, when you're dealing with combat, area of effects are pretty nice. It's not always the end-all be-all of choices, but if you're looking for a guaranteed hits, or an ability that just at least deals half the damage to the enemy, Flame Arc is going to be your best friend. And the benefit of this is that Arcanist exploits don't actually trigger spell resistance, I do believe, if I recall correctly. So that is another thing that you can also consider, because these will bypass the spell resistance of enemies, which I do believe is a good thing. No, it is definitely a good thing, because the game has a problem of dealing with spell resistance. If you can't bypass that as a caster, you're going to have troubles. So, getting Flame Arc might be to your interest. And then, of course, there is the fun ability, which is Force Strike. Force Strike is, well, as you spend an Arcane Reservoir point, you can automatically strike a target within 30 feet. It basically works like Magic Missile. It deals a d4 of force damage plus 1 damage per Arcanist level. But the difference between Force Strike and Magic Missile is that Force Strike actually scales the damage with 1 bolt, as opposed to multiple. If you're looking for an auto hit, Force Strike is probably going to be your best friend, I would personally say. Because you're going to deal automatically, like, come level 20, you're going to be dealing 20 plus a d4, so that's like 24 damage. Which is a reasonable damage ability come, you know, the late game. Spells and effects, however, that do negate Magic Missile also negate this effect, though. So things like a shield spell will stop you dead in your tracks. That is the only concern that I should have with this ability. Next, we have Holy Water Jet. Holy Water Jet is an interesting one. It's basically a 30-foot line of water that deals damage equal to d8 of your damage, plus a Charisma modifier. Plus an additional d8 points of damage. Again, it's a single Arcane Reservoir point, which is pretty okay. But, yeah, this only affects targets that are affected by Holy Water, which is most demons. In this case, it's a pretty decent ability, but at the same time, you need to decide whether you're going to be focusing on demons alone. Well, actually, no, this actually works on demons and undead, so it's not a bad choice. I am a little worried given it, but, I mean, I'm a little worried in the fact that, you know, it's a specific thing, because there are some enemies that aren't affected by this, so I would definitely consider getting something extra on top of the Holy Water Jet, if you're going to be going this route. But this can definitely help you a lot against most undead, which happen to be in Chapter 2 a lot. And in Chapter 1, there is a lot of demons, and in Chapter 3, and, you know, most of the game, there's going to be demons, so Holy Water Jet does have the potential to be useful, so definitely consider that. But I digress. The next one is Ice Missile. If you're looking to make the enemy staggered for a round, you can actually make them... If you're looking for a stagger, this might be your interest. An Ice Missile is a ranged touch attack, much like the Acid Missile. However, instead of... basically, it's the same thing, except it does cold damage, and instead of sickening the enemy, it staggers the enemy for a round. Now, for those of you who do not know what stagger is basically the enemy can only take a move action or a standard action, which is really amazing in certain instances. If you're looking to immobilize, like, a boss or anything, that could be really nice. It could be very convenient. It's not the end-all, be-all of choices. Like, there is ways to just circumvent, like, full attacks and all that jazz, but this is one of the ways that you can do it. It's an option, to say the least. Lightning Lance. So, Lightning Lance is a bit of an interesting one. One second. It's basically much like Ice Lance and Acid Lance, basically. The only difference is the target's vision is impaired, meaning that all creatures are treated as if they have concealment 20%. This is okay. But I wouldn't say it's the best thing, because you can always just get Blur, and that would solve the problem. But this is another way you can actually get a bit more defense against the enemy. Because I do believe this also stacks with Blur and Displacement, so it's another form of concealment, basically. So if you're using Blur, if you're using Displacement, this might also be another 20% that you can rely on, which will make it even harder for the enemy to attack you. So it's just even more AC that you can work with. So Lightning Lance is a little bit more defensive if you're looking for something like that. I'm not sure if the 20% works, per se, with Blur and Displacement, but I do believe it is something that you can use. Regardless. Next is Potent Magic. This one is by far the most interesting. Whenever you expend a point from your Arcane Reservoir to increase your cast level of a spell, the cast level increases by 2 instead of 1. Whenever you expend 1 point from your Arcane Reservoir to increase the spell's DC, it is increased by 2 instead of 1. I will go over what this means in detail later, once we're actually talking about the Arcane Reservoir points. But think of it like a pool of abilities that you can actually apply to, you know, your character, which is really nice. From there, we got Shadow Veil, which is basically concealment. It is basically a blur ability. If you spend an Arcane Reservoir point, you gain concealment 20% concealment. You gain a +5 to stealth checks, and it lasts for a number of rounds equal to 1 plus your charisma bonus, which is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's, like, amazing, but it's certainly up there with usefulness, especially if you're trying to play more of a roguish character that's trying to sneak around against the enemy, as opposed to just direct confrontation. Sonic Blast. Okay, Sonic is the one... yeah, it's okay. So, Sonic Blast is a ranged touch attack, much like everything else. The reason it does not have a special ability tied with it, Sonic Blast, is simply because it is sonic damage. Sonic damage is one of the few resistances in the game that is very heavily ignored. So, you may see some people actually playing to sonic damage, you may see some people playing to other things, but most enemies are not going to have sonic resistance. That's why, the summons from my chalice that I have in my game seem to have more effect than me. But yeah, no, sonic damage is a really useful tool. If you're looking for a reliable damage source that bypasses most, if not all, resistances, without dipping a feet into your mythic things, this might be to your interest. Spell resistance. You can grant yourself a spell resistance for a number of rounds equal to your charisma modifier as a standard action by expending 1 point. The spell resistance is equal to 6 plus your Arcanist level. Spell resistance is basically an armor class against spells. If you're finding that you're having trouble with spells, this might be one of your solutions to that problem. So, if you're looking to deal with enemies in a certain way, this might be to your interest, because there is that. There are spells later on in the game, eventually, that will help you get a spell resistance regardless. This is just an early option if you're, you know, struggling with certain spells here and there. I wouldn't say it's the best option, though, personally. I would personally wait until your later levels, because at that point, you might as well just get the resistances to an element, or maybe some other, you know, form of benefit that you can take advantage of. But spell resistance is an option there if you want it. I wouldn't say it's the best option, but take your pick. Wooden Flesh. This is basically, well, it is basically a natural armor boost, which is really nice. You can spend 1 point from your Arcane Reservoir to gain DR2, or 2 natural armor bonus to AC. You also get a DR to slashing, where N is equal to your charisma modifier, for 1 minute per Arcanist level. While this ability is in effect, you count as both your original creature and a plant creature for the purpose of abilities and spells, which is pretty interesting. Now, would I say this is very useful? Honestly, this is basically the poor man version of Barkskin. If you're looking for a Barkskin ability, this might be to your interest, to be quite honest. And honestly, I might even grab this, because this is actually really good, because DR is very rare. to get. Of course, I'd have to probably get something else, given, you know, it works off your charisma modifier, sadly. But it's an option available to you if you want to get some extra armor. For one level, to invest in wooden flesh is a pretty good trade-off, even if it just lasts for a little bit. It is basically like having the second level spell Bark Skin, which is really nice. With only taking one level in Arcanist, obviously, as you can probably imagine. But I digress. That is the Arcanist exploits. Cantrips are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, you can see them here. Acid Splash is just a D3 of acid, Ray of Frost, D3 of cold, Jolt, D3 of electricity. I guess I never did go over cantrips of Alchemist, but I'm not going to bother. It's basically just mundane stuff that'll help you. It basically explains it here. I'm not going to go over those. For an Arcanist, you're only proficient with simple weapons, so that is a bummer. But considering what benefits you get as opposed to it, it's pretty good. Arcane Reservoir. Let's talk with this. Now, I've been talking a lot about Arcane Reservoir, but I've not been talking about what it does. So, Arcane Reservoir holds a maximum amount of magical energy equal to 3 plus your Arcanist level. Each day, when preparing the spells, you basically gain a number of points equal to 3 plus half your level. Any points you have from the previous day are lost, however, so keep that in mind as you're doing this. You can also regain these points through the consumption of spells and class features. Or the consume spell class feature, rather, and some Arcanist exploits. You can never hold more points than the maximum above noted, so think of it like a maximum capacity of sorts. If you have too much, it's basically going to delete the rest, which is not cool. So to give you a rough idea, at level 10, let's say, you can have up to 13 Arcane Reservoir points, and you can restore a number equal to 8, which is pretty good for a level. You can use it to fuel your Arcane Exploits, which is what I talked about earlier, or we basically can use a free action to expend an Arcane Reservoir point to increase your cast level by 1, or increase the spell DC by 1. This is ties into the actual ability over here, which I showed earlier, which is Potent Magic. Basically, this modifies that bonus up to 2, so if you're looking for a way to boost your cast level temporarily, this might actually be to your interest. So, say you wanted to, I don't know, say you wanted to make Magic Missile greater. You could use Potent Magic, and you could increase your cast level by 2 instead of 1, and that difference could mean the difference between getting 2 Magic Missiles as opposed to 3, which is a pretty nice ability. But it basically increases your cast level, or, you know, it helps your DCs of spells, which is really nice, I must admit. It can help you a lot. From there, there's obviously this, which is the special ability that you get. And then you get the full reservoir ability, which is, I believe, what I talked about. No, this might be a bit different than what I was talking about. There should be another ability that is different from full reservoir, I think. But you no longer gain only 3 plus half your Arcanist level arcane points. Instead, you gain 3 plus your Arcanist level in points. So basically, it takes your reservoir and just amps it up to its maximum every day, which is nice. And then finally, you are given the ability to consume spells. Consuming spells basically converts all your Arcanist spell points, or basically you take your spell pool, you sacrifice a spell using consume spell as a move action, and you can consume well, let me explain this better. You spend a move action, and when you consume a spell, well, words. Alright. So, basically consume spells allows you to consume a spell, right? It uses a move action to do so. You can do this a number of times a day equal to your charisma modifier, minimum once. Doing this adds number of point of arcane reservoir points equal to the level of spell slot you consumed. So, say you wanted to consume a first level spell slot. You're going to get 1 point of Arcane Reservoir point, which is nice. Any excess points, however, are lost, so keep that in mind as you're doing this. But you can basically use your spells as a point to revert back into Arcanist exploits if you prefer those abilities as opposed to what spells you're getting. This can be good if you're just trying to focus more into the Arcanist exploits bit here, but it really depends on you. From there, we are given the greater exploits. Now, the greater exploits are basically modified versions of the basic ones, so this is basically a build-up towards something greater. So, to give you an example, basically the Acid Jet, for example, is going to be Lingering Acid. If you spend 2 Arcane Reservoir points, the target takes additional damage on the following rounds if it fails a saving throw. The target takes a d6 of acid damage, and the following rounds for every... Or, it takes, It takes 1d6 points of damage on the following round for every 2d6 points of acid damage dealt in the initial attack. So, say you're dealing, I don't know, 46 damage. You will be dealing an additional 2d6 damage on the next round that character goes, essentially, which is really nice in hindsight. Let's see, is there anything else? The damage continues until the amount of acid damage dealt on the previous round by the effect is 1d6. For example, a 9th level Arcanist would deal 5d6 charisma 5d6 plus your charisma modifier points in acid damage. Next turn it would be 2d6, and then it'd be 1d6. So basically, it just scales it slowly downward, which can get really insane later on if you stack up the Lingering Acid. So, for example, it could go to 10d6, then you can deal 5d6, then it can go to 15d6, I think, and then it could go to, I don't know, 7d6. Basically, the more acid you do, the more crazy the damage can deal, I think. Otherwise, it works much like the Acid Jet exploit. It just needs 2 points instead of 1. But these greater exploits are basically modifiers of options that you have. So, another thing is Burning Flame. If you use Burning Flame, each target catches on fire if it fails a saving throw. And until the fire is extinguished, the target takes 3d6 points of fire damage at the start of each of its turns, and must make a reflex every round to extinguish the flames. This is pretty decent if you're looking to burn the enemy. Dancing Electricity. All creatures adjacent to target take an amount of damage equal to half the amount of electricity damage dice rolled. Adjacent creatures can also attempt a reflex save to halve this damage. Whether or not the target makes its saving throw has no effect on adjacent targets. The Arcanist must... Yeah. But, yeah. You must have these abilities in order for it to work. Greater Spell Resistance is basically the modified version of the normal one, which just increases it by 5 points, I believe. And, yeah. As long as you use a Spell Resistance exploit, it will basically increase the resistance by 5. So instead it becomes 11 plus your level in Spell Resistance. Again, not the best ability, I personally believe, because you can always get spells that give spell resistance, so not my personal favorite. But hey, it's there. Hellfire Ray. This exploit works as the Flame Arc exploit. The difference is that half the damage is dealt as Unholy Power, and is not subject to fire resistance. Good creatures take that damage good creatures that take damage from Hellfire Ray must succeed a will save, or also be sickened. So, Hellfire Ray basically works like Flame Arc, and it's basically a line damage, I do believe, but half the damage is bypassing. So, for those who are not familiar, Unholy is a special ability in the majority of the game. Unholy basically bypasses all resistances. It's much like the Holy Enchantment, which is the other counterpart that deals, damage bypassing any resistances, which is pretty crazy. This is the Unholy variant, basically. So if you're looking to play an Unholy character, this might be to your interest. Hellfire Ray is pretty decent for a choice. And then, of course, we got Icy Tune. As long as the... basically, it's the same as... it's basically an advanced version of the other ability of Ice Missile. If the target fails its saving throw, as long as the ice remains, which is 1 minute per level, the target is entangled and takes a point of dexterity damage at the start of each of its turns. The target can try to break free from the ice by making a strength check with a DC equal to 10 plus your charisma modifier. If the target takes fire damage, the ice melts and the effect ends. But at the same time, this is a decent ability if you're facing, like, a caster, for example. Because casters don't have that high of a strength, so this might be to your interest if you're looking to beat back some enemies. But I digress. It's a reasonable choice. I wouldn't say it's the best, though, out there. But if you're looking to get some dex damage in, that might be to your interest. Beyond that, there is Magical Supremacy, which is the final point here. At 20th level, you learn how to convert your arcane reservoirs into spells and back again. You can cast any spell you have prepared by expending a number of points from your arcane reservoir, equal to the level of spell that is being cast, instead of expending a spell slot. Basically, it's a reverse form of using consumed spells, essentially. So, you can start using your Arcanist exploits to, well, you can use your arcane reservoir to power a 9th level spell, for example. Which is pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's, like, perfect, but, I mean, if you're gonna go Arcanist full all the way, this might be to your interest. Alright. Now that we've covered the Arcanist itself, let's go over to spells before we leave this character here. So, as you can see, the spells are listed as such. I would say out of the lot, Mage Armor is going to be your best friend, alongside maybe a reliable spell like Magic Missile. Shield is definitely a good choice if you're looking to play any caster, because AC is absolutely necessary in this game. If you're looking to play a early game, definitely go with Color Spray. Color Spray is a really good early game spell because it can really knock down literally anybody. And it would basically allow for an easy clear of a floor. But again, at that point you may as well just use cantrips, but there is many, you know, exploits that you can utilize. But again, there's a few spells here. I'm not going to go over the spells per se, but I will just scroll down so you guys can see them. But Sense Vitals is definitely worth considering because it will deal sneak attack damage, which is going to help with any spell that you cast that's touch attack. So if you're playing a touch attack build with these acid jets or whatever have you, that might be to your interest. Blur is always a staple, as is Mirror Image. If you're looking for more controlled spells, Web might be to your interest. There's also Mortal Terror and Bone Fist, which is a few good spells. Ghoul Touch is actually a sleeper spell. Not many people use it, but Paralysis is an absurdly potent ability. The only thing is that some enemies do have poison immunity, and undead, I do believe, are unaffected by this. But Ghoul Touch can be the difference between a fight being very hard and a fight just going so easily that it's absurd. If I were you, I'd consider that or Bone Shaker, because, I mean, you've seen Bone Shaker's ability. Just forcing a target fatigued is just like it's a free -2 to stat, or a free -2 to strength and dexterity, which is really nice, I do believe. I think it's a minus to strength and dexterity? I think it is. I don't know. Regardless, being fatigued is a nasty ability, so Bone Shaker just has that merit going for it, which is nice. Other than that, you know, there's a few other abilities here that are pretty nice, but it really depends on you what you go with. But, yeah. Ghoul Touch is personally my favorite spell, but it's not something I can utilize in this game much, sadly, so, yeah. Alright, level 3, you got a few abilities here. I would personally consider Vampiric Touch. Greater Magic Weapon is also a good one for buffers. Protection from arrows, naturally. Maybe not Protection from energy, unless you're playing solo. Haste is always an amazing ability, as is Displacement. Force Punch is an it's an interesting ability, I would say, but unfortunately there's not much use in it, unless you're looking to play a Force build, which can be quite fun here. I would urge you consider it, if only for the funny. Heroism's pretty staple, which is really nice. Fireball is a pretty staple spell if you're looking for fire damage, but again, it really depends on you. Vengeful Comets. I've not actually seen this be useful just yet, but whenever you're affected by a spell, this could actually be pretty fancy, considering it deals a d6 of bludgeoning damage and 3d6 of cold damage every time you're hit by a spell from the enemy. This could be handy if you're looking to deal damage to the enemy and you don't have a means of retaliation. This could help, I'm gonna say. I'm just not sure if it will. And then, of course, you got Animate Dead Lesser, which is really nice. Animate Dead Lesser is basically just Animate Dead, but, you know, it's a shorter duration. But considering you can get Undead Skeletal Champions, it's pretty nice. Regardless, from there you got, you know, Arcanist level 4 casting, which gives a bundle of things. Bone Shatter might be to your interest, because it can also make the target exhausted, which is pretty good. Bone Shatter is actually probably the better one out of the two that you could go with, from Bone Shaker and Bone Shatter, but I digress. False Life is always a staple, Protection from Energy is a staple, Animate Dead's a nice ability if you're looking to summon. Enervation. Normally, I would say this is a pretty good ability. The only thing is that it costs a spell slot to use, but if you're looking to deal with a boss, Enervation might be your best friend, to be quite honest. The only difference is, well, the only thing I do have a pet peeve about is that you can't actually utilize much of them often. But if you're looking to reduce somebody's level, Enervation might be to your interest, and it would certainly help, I must admit. So definitely consider that. Greater Invisibility is an amazing spell if you're dealing with most enemies, because it will make them flat-footed in most cases. Elemental Bodies and stuff, not really good early on, but later levels it can be really amazing. So take your pick there. Angelic Aspect, Echolocation are pretty good. Stone Skin Communal is always nice because it's just going to give DR 10, which is an absurdly useful tool. Polymorph is a bit of an interesting tab. I wouldn't say go for it, but definitely consider it, because for Polymorph, you can certainly get some interesting buffs. Icy Prison's a staple lockdown spell if you're looking to lock an enemy down and prevent them from doing anything. It's only good if you're a caster, though, so keep that in mind. Feeble Mind is good for dealing with enemies that have a high intelligence and charisma. It's not going to help you against the wisdom part of things, which is a bummer. Although, that said, it can be nice, I would say. If you're dealing with enemies that... If you're dealing with an ability that, you know, you need the enemy to have a low intelligence or charisma, Feeble Mind might be your best friend, because it is reducing them down to 1 intelligence charisma. And, despite my say here, if you are able to succeed in feeble-minding somebody, if you can deal 1 point of intelligence or charisma damage, you can basically make them go comatose, I do believe. Which is a fun little trick that you can employ in the eyes of the enemy. But, I digress. Genie Kind is a good staple spell, if I recall correctly. It gives you a nice natural armor bonus, and you don't actually change into much. You just get a d6 to an element type, and a resist of 10. This is actually something people employ normally in order for them to actually go through enemies with ease. And it's basically the polymorph variant that can actually get you a +4 to stats without losing your spellcasting. So Genie Kind is a very useful tool. Sadly, I don't think they sell scrolls of it, so that is the only bummer that I have to suffer through. But I digress. Racking Ray, a very good staple spell. I don't think I need to elaborate why, but dealing a d4 of strength and dex damage is always going to be nice. It's just going to give the enemy to complete oblivion, which is always going to help you. Thought Sense, pretty much basically Blind Sense, but different. Cloud Kill is a good staple spell if you're looking to just gimp the enemy even further if you're looking for options, but at that point you might as well go Stinking Cloud, because that's going to minimize their actions, so take your pick, it really doesn't matter. Alright, but beyond that, you got 6th level spells here. Out of everything, Chains of Light might be to your interest. It basically paralyzes enemies if they fail a save. What else? Greater Heroism is always nice. Definitely grab that. True Seeing is always good. Disintegrate, I sleep on this quite a bit, but for the damage it's dealing, it can be really useful. So definitely consider that. Hellfire Ray is also a sleeper spell, but it's basically, how do I put this? It's basically the Scorching Ray, but slightly better. The only difference is that, much like the ability that I showed over in the Greater Exploits, it's basically the same as Hellfire Ray. It just deals unholy damage as part of its ability. Transformation is good if you're trying to play a more combat-oriented character. I wouldn't personally go for Arcanist if you're going to go with Transformation, though. Because, well, it basically gimps you from casting spells, period, which sucks. Sirocco. This is an amazing spell. Pick it up. It's going to help you a lot. It is the magnum opus for spells if you're looking to control the enemy. If you want to knock them prone, this is going to be your best friend, which I urge you highly to consider. Then there's a few other spells. Phantasmal Putrefaction has the ability to be insane. I personally don't use it personally. Well, I personally haven't used it yet. I haven't used an illusion build yet, but it's an option. Repulsion. This is an interesting one because I've not actually seen this spell before, but yeah, no, you just basically can't enter a 40-foot area where the enemy or your ally is, which is pretty good. So if you're looking to keep the enemy at bay, this might be to your interest. But yeah, they have to make a will save or be unable to move for the duration of the spell or until it leaves the area, which is interesting. Create Undead, pretty staple. You saw that in my Lich playthrough. It's a really banger spell if you're looking for that. But I digress. Is there anything else I want to go over? Not really. Most of it seems pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to go through all of it, but, you know, Ice Body is pretty good. Legendary Proportions is always nice. Firebrand is a pretty good buff spell if you can get it to the 25 cast level points. At that point, you got Angel Aspect Raider, which is honestly the better version of, you know, Angelic Aspect, which I prefer. So getting this is going to be nice. Protection from spells is always nice. You got a bunch of combat spells. Frightful Aspect is what I was talking about on getting a spell resistance. It is a 10 plus half your cast level. But still, you get an absurd set of buffs. You get a +6 size bonus to strength, +4 to con, +6 to natural armor. It's basically a variant of Dragonkind, but not as strong. But Dragonkind polymorphs you anyways, so that is an option there. Iron Body is the variant of Ice Body, but instead it just gives you a very absurd amount of resistances. So definitely consider grabbing Iron Body. It's basically a very bulky ability. Only downside is that you suffer -6 dex, but for the resistances that you're getting, all of the resistance, mind you, it's a really good ability. Then, of course, you got Mind Blank and, you know, all that jazz. But I digress. And then, of course, you got 9th level spells, which you know, it's pretty obvious what, you know, you're getting with these. You're getting Icy Prison Mass, Tsunami. Shape Change is a good one if you're looking for something like that. Clashing Rocks is a really reliable spell that isn't affected by spell resistance, which can be really handy. Heroic Invocation, pretty staple stuff, pretty nice. Weird. It's Phantasmal Killer, but better, I think. I personally don't think it's worth your time, but, you know, if you're playing a Illusionist build, this actually might be to your interest. I would say it's an amazing spell because, you know, it can actually stun enemies, though. And it also makes them take a d4 strength damage, which any ability damage against an enemy is always going to be nice. Now the magnum opus of what I personally like, Fiery Body. Fiery Body is an amazing ability, and I urge you to get it if you're not, like, if you're immune to cold, at least. Because this can be really helpful. It's basically like having the Iron Body, but instead of DR, you're basically getting some resistances, and you get a boost to Dex, and you're actually dealing a 3d6 fire damage on top of everything, which is an amazing ability if you're fighting enemies, you know, that are annoying. Like, swarms. Then, of course, you got Meteor Swarm, which is an interesting ability. It's a nice ability, but at that point, you might as well just take a Tsunami, which is a good staple ability. Deals bludgeoning damage. It's a nice AoE. But, I digress. There's a bunch of, not affected by spell resistance abilities, so definitely consider some of these. Energy Drain is basically, yeah, it's basically that ray that deals D4 of negative levels, but this is basically the upgraded version, which is 2d4, which is always nice. But I digress. That covers the entirety of the Arcanist class, though. Now, we can finally go into the alternate classes. Let's start off with the Brown Fur Transmuter. Yep, we're going to alter this. There we go. So, the Brown Fur Transmuter is a bit, you know, unique. You lose some Arcanist exploits, but in turn you get some extra abilities that can certainly be handy. Alright, so, if we go over to class progression, you lose 2 of your Arcanist exploits, but you're given 2 amazing abilities. Well, I guess technically 3 abilities, but one of the abilities is absolutely god amazing. Alright, Powerful Change. At 3rd level, you can learn to harness the power of your magic to empower your transmutations. Whenever you cast a transmutation spell using one of your Arcanist spell slots, you can expend 1 point from your Arcane Reservoir as a free action to bolster the spell. If the spell grants a bonus to an ability score, the bonus is then increased by +2. You cannot expend more than 1 point per your Arcane Reservoir in this way, but to give you an idea, if you're, say, using something like Enlarge Person, you can increase the amount that you're getting by +2. So if you're getting a bonus to an ability score, this is going to increase it by 2, if it is a transmutation spell. Now, I'm not sure if they fixed this, of course, but this change can actually apply to other spells that are outside the transmutation list, I do believe. So I would have to... You'd have to experiment to see what sort of things these actually affect. But I do believe these affect things outside of transmutation as well. So if you're getting an ability score from... I don't know. I do believe there is limits. I do believe there's, like... It's really buggy, I must admit. But having the ability to increase a Bull's strength from a +4 to a +6 is really nice. I don't think I need to elaborate why that is, but this can be a really powerful build if you're looking for it. Going on to Share Transmutation, which is the second ability that you get, you can basically target others with your transmutation spells, even if it is a personal spell. So basically, what it does is it changes personal spells into a range of touch. So, say you wanted to use, I don't know, God, hold on, 1 second. Say you wanted to use, say, shape change here. You would, normally use it on yourself, but by going the Brown Fur Transmuter, you can quite literally pass it on to somebody else. This is a great buffing tool. I would urge you to definitely consider getting some levels in Transmuter for the buffs here if you're looking to play a buff character. And then, of course, you got Transmutation Supremacy. You basically get the Extend spell feat without altering the spell time or slots used, and whenever you use a powerful change ability, the bonus is increased by 4 instead of 2. A powerful change ability? Hold on. Oh, I see. Okay, so at level 20, so, you know, at level 20, basically these bonus actually increase up to a +4, so your bull strength is actually going to give you a +8 to strength, as opposed to anything else. I don't think I need to elaborate how absurd Arcane Brown Fur Transmuter can get. Honestly, I might even consider saying that you should get 20 levels in it. Just for that. Especially if you're playing in a group, but maybe not the best for solo runs, but definitely something to consider if you just need somebody to buff your allies. Brown Fur Transmuter might be the way. But I digress. Now, we are going to move on to the Eldritch Font. The Eldritch Font is a little bit, of the same. It just removes some Arcanist exploits and gives you some nice abilities. It basically changes a few things, but here and there, it's not that bad. But I digress. From here, you are given a few new abilities, nothing too crazy. You are given the Font of Power, I do believe, which is an additional effect on top of Arcane Reservoir. The Eldritch Font gains an additional spell slot for each level of Arcanist spell you can cast. However, the number of spells of each level that she can prepare reduces by 1. If this reduces her spells prepared to a level of 0, you can still gain spell slots for that level, which can be used to cast spells using metamagic feats. So basically, you'll lose out on certain casting levels times, but you will still be able to use that spells to cast metamagic, which is decent. At 3rd level, an Eldritch Font, as a swift action, can pour more power into your spells and abilities. So you can add 2 to your cast level and DC of spell, or increase your effective Arcanist level by 2 when using an Arcanist exploit. You do become fatigued when using this ability, and if you're already fatigued, you become exhausted. If she's already exhausted, you cannot use the ability. This does not stack with spending points from her Arcane Reservoir to increase the spellcaster level or DC, much like the other one. Which is a bummer, but understandable, given you'd be getting a lot more power as a result. But given the fact that you can use this without spending a... Yeah, no, you can't... Yeah, with Eldritch Surge, if you use this, and as long as you don't spend any... Yeah, you basically use this and you don't expend a fatigue. So this is basically a lesser restoration cure, and then you can just keep using Eldritch Surge once every battle, probably. Improve Surge. An Eldritch Font can use her Eldritch Surge ability to make 2 attack rolls associated with a spell, and take the better result. So, to put it simply, if you're using something like, I don't know, say you're using Scorching Ray. If you use Improved Surge, you can basically make a roll twice, get a better result. So this is pretty decent for touch attacks, if you're looking for that. From there, you got the Greater Surge, where you can use your Eldritch Surge to force a creature to re-roll a saving throw against one spell or Arcanist exploit, and take the lower value. The Eldritch Font must declare the use of this ability before the result of that creature's saving throw is revealed, and if the spell or Arcanist exploit affects more than one target, only one target is affected by this ability. So that's pretty good if you're using AoE spells. So if you use a Fireball and it's affecting one enemy, they have to roll twice or take the worst result, which is pretty good. And then of course you got the Bottomless Well. Once per day, you can spend a full round action to refuel yourself. Doing so allows her to prepare new spells and regain points of Arcane Reservoir, equal to half her level. So, yeah. I'm just trying to figure out how this works. Okay. Okay, I think I get what this does. So basically what it does is... Say you run out of spells. Say you somehow run out of spells and you got nothing. If you use Bottomless Well, you can basically recharge all of those spells and half your Arcane Reservoir. Which is pretty nice, I must admit. You'd be getting 10 points of your Arcane Reservoir at 20th level, and you get all your spells back, which is a pretty nice, addition. That means you can effectively buff for one row of, combats, and then, you can buff for, one turn, and then go... Well, not one turn, but you can buff for, crazy amounts, and then you just reset your spells and just go full combat spells, which is an interesting, play on Arcanist. Okay, Arcane Mage, or Nature Mage. Let's see. Let me just check to see if anything's changed here. The only thing that seems to have changed is nature magic here. Ah, I see. Okay, so... yeah. Let me just go over this. To give you an idea, by taking the Nature Mage, you're basically using a Druid spell list instead of a normal spell list. So you'd be getting more Druidic spells, such as Entangle, Aspect of the Falcon. You get some abilities that are more combative, like Snowball, but yeah. Most of it's just going to be more of a Druid spell list that you can choose from, which is pretty nice. So if you're looking to play more of a Druid, this might be to your taste, because this will get you Bark Skin. If you are much preference for something else, but I digress. I actually do believe that... this is just a theory, personally. But you might be able to stack Wooden Flesh with Bark Skin, actually. So you could actually get a additional 4 armor on top of the DR slashing, but I digress. That's just a potential thought that could happen here. But yeah, no, Nature Mage is basically the... It's a Druid in casting, but otherwise keeps the same abilities as an Arcanist. Just, it works off Druid stuff, which is working off Intelligence, I believe. Yep, your spells are considered arcane in this case, and you still use Intelligence modifier to determine the DC of spells for a number of additional spells per day. Otherwise, it's the same as the Arcanist. The Phantasmal Mage is a little bit of a different one. It requires you to be a gnome, so this is probably our first encounter with a race-specific class. But by going with this, a Phantasmal Mage takes away some exploits, I believe. Replaces your your supremacies, but it can be really interesting. But yeah, no, we go over here, and it will give you an interesting set of abilities. Arcane Metamagic. A Phantasmal Mage loses the ability to increase cast level of the next spell using Arcane Reservoir, but instead gains a number of powerful metamagic abilities at 5th, 11th, and 17th level. So you will not be able to increase the cast level of your spells, but you will be able to use Arcane Metamagic. At 5th level, you can spend a point from your Arcane Reservoir as a free action to make the next Arcanist illusion spell you cast in 2 rounds extended, reach, or selective, as per use of the corresponding metamagic feats. From there, you are given the 11th level one, which you can spend 2 points to use persistent or empowered, per the corresponding metamagic feat. From there, at level 17, you can use it to get a maximized spell. Oh, wait, it's specific to illusion spells, though, so keep that in mind as you're doing this. So, you can spend 3 points to make it maximized, or 4 points to make it quickened. So, to put it simply, the Phantasmal Mage takes illusion spells and gives them an amazing buff. Glow-up, essentially, I would say. But yeah, no, you get a glow-up of power. That will certainly help you in the long term. Arcane Metamagic basically... It basically takes away the need to get the feats, and instead use your Arcane Reservoir to purchase the feats temporarily, just so you can use them for that particular moment. And then, of course, you got Metamagic Supremacy. The cost of Phantasmal Mage's metamagic abilities is reduced by 1 Arcane Pool point. So basically, you'd be spending 3 points to make a spell quickened, 2 points to make it maximized, 1 point to make it persistent or empowered, and it would cost free to be extended, reached, or selective, which is pretty cool. Now, I'm not sure if you can spend this multiple times. It doesn't specify whether you can or not, but it's there, I suppose. The really underlying factor really determines whether you want to expend it as a free action and use multiple. I'm not sure if you can do that or not. I'm not going to, go through and try, but if you want to, test it out, definitely consider it, because this could be very powerful, depending on how it works. But, again, it's only for illusion spells, so you gotta keep that in mind. It's not going to be as amazing as other abilities that you could get, because, I mean, if you look around, the only illusion spell that you're getting at 9th level is weird at that point, and you're dealing 3d6 points damage on top of that. For something that is maximized, it's not that great. For weird or Quicken, though, that's not bad. So if you're looking for a metamagic mage, this might be to your interest. Unlettered Arcanist. This is a pretty interesting one, if I recall correctly. It's not going to affect your, abilities, everything. Well, words. Let's just go over the unlettered alchemist, or Arcanist, rather. Alright, so the only changes that the unlettered Arcanist does is that it gives you witches spells as opposed to wizard and sorcerer spells. And you also get a familiar, I do believe. So basically, you're doing the same thing as the druid one, but you're just basically converting it into a wizard and sorcerer spell list. You're also getting a familiar here, which is pretty nice. So honestly, if you're going to go this route, I would definitely consider this, because at this would be good for 1 level dip, probably. So if you're looking for a 1 level dip, I would definitely consider this, because you can get a familiar, and familiars have the benefit of having special abilities. And out of all of them, I would definitely suggest you go with the... Well, it really depends. If you're looking for initiative, definitely go with the hair familiar, because it can go with a bonus to initiative and perception. If you're looking for something that's going to make you more bulky, though, I do believe there is a familiar that gives you a +1 to AC. I just need to find it. I believe it's a... Yeah, here we go. Lizard. If you go with the Lizard familiar, you'll get a +1 natural armor bonus to AC, which is nice. So, literally, just investing 1 level into this could give you a +1 to AC. You can get 2... You can also get an additional +2 to AC temporarily if you go the route of Wood and Flesh, which is a really nice ability. It'll give you a 2 natural armor bonus to AC and DR to slashing, so it's definitely a decent combo if you go this route. Of course, it's only gonna base off your charisma, which is the downside here. The Arcanist exploits are weak in that regard. But I mean, if you have a high enough charisma, this could be to your interest. And if you're going the route I'm going, this could actually be good later on. Because I could see this actually, working in my benefit for the future. But I digress. That is the Unlettered Arcanist. And finally, you got the White Mage. I do believe the White Mage is basically the cleric version of this class. So, what happens here? Oh, okay, so it's a little different. But otherwise, it follows the same theme here. At first level, you can expend 1 point from your Arcane Reservoir to use one of your slots to cast a Cure spell, as if it were on your spell list and prepared. You can use... The spell must be of a level the Arcanist can cast. At 10th level, the White Mage can expend 5 points to cast Breath of Life. So basically, it's a nice healing ability. Spontaneous healing goes up to here, yep. So basically, take the Arcanist exploit, remove 2 of its arcane exploits, and it's basically a White Mage, as explained. I guess I should explain that a bit better, but I digress. So, White Mage. White Mage basically allows you to expend Arcane Reservoir points to heal, which can be cure spells. So, for spending 4 points at 4th level casting, you can basically conjure up a Cure Critical Wounds. So, if you're looking for a decent healer, this might be to your interest. I wouldn't say it's the best healer out there, but it is an option, to say the least. So if you're looking for something creative there, that's the option. Alright, and with that, I think that's basically everything. That is... yeah, no, that's basically everything among the list of the Arcanist. Final thoughts. Alright, so it is it is not unknown to anybody, but for those who don't know, Brown Fur Transmuter has the benefit of being absurdly potent and powerful as a buff mage. If you're looking for a buff mage that focuses in on Arcane, Brown Fur Transmuter is going to be your best friend because of those boosts that it's giving. So definitely consider Brown Fur Transmuter if you're looking for raw stats to increase your, potential. It's going to help you a lot. I urge you to consider it. What would I say for the other classes? Really, the Arcanist is just strong in general. As long as you're getting your Arcanist exploit at first level, you can basically multi-class into anything and it'd be pretty good, I would say. But ideally you want to focus in on Arcanist so you can get more exploits, I do believe, which is the big thing here. Now, would it be a great potential multi-class? Yes, it would. It would give you a bunch of AC if you especially just went one level of unlettered Arcanist, because that's going to give you technically a 3 AC with, at minimum, 1 minute of an AC boost, which is really nice. For any sort of caster, this could be really good. The only downside I would say is that this requires you to be both proficient in intelligence and charisma. Intelligence for your actual spells, charisma for your, Arcanist exploits. But that's the downside of playing Arcanist, because you have to mix and match. Would I go with this, and would it actually work in unfair difficulty? I would say yes, this can work in unfair difficulty, but you'd have to dedicate this as a buffer, or if you're going solo, you definitely have to dedicate this as a multi-class more than anything, because there are way better classes out there. But if you were to play this to its full extent, I could see this actually working on unfair. You'd have to heavily rely on the Arcanist exploits, though, which will require... It's the same issue with Alchemist. It's a limited amount of points. I do believe there is a mythic feat that prevents you from actually needing to spend exploits, or rather, spending points into your exploits. But I'd have to check to confirm, which I might actually do right now, so give me a moment here, because I do believe there is a mythic ability that helps you for Arcanist specifically. Okay, 1 second. There is nothing specifying feats. Hold on. I do believe it's under mythic feats here, so give me a hot second. Okay, expanded. Nope. Okay. This isn't really helping me here. Okay, yeah, no, I'm not seeing anything that really specifies Arcanist exploits here. It might not be a mythic feat. Hold on. There is other things. There is mythic abilities. Here we go. This might be to our thing. Alright. Okay, so there is 2 things that you can use here that would certainly help Arcanist, but again, it's not something that will be infinite. If you were to use the Abundant Arcane Pool ability, or the Abundant Arcane Pool Mythic ability, it would scale your Arcane points on top of your Mythic rank, which is not really that amazing. And then, of course, there's the full Reservoir ability, which restores your points much faster. Much like the Alchemist, the downside is obviously, using the arcane exploits to, utilize your abilities. The one benefit I can see about this working is if you have a high as hell charisma, and you just constantly use consume spells of high level to keep your supply going. That's the benefit as opposed to the Alchemist. But again, much like the Alchemist, it has a temporary resource, which is not good. If you want to last long enough in this series, or in Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous, you need to make sure your resources are not going to be expended. Sure, you have cantrips that you can utilize, but if you're not going to be utilizing the best of the Arcanist exploits, then you might as well just find another class that's going to benefit more. But there is ways you can actually work around this to a degree. You just have to expend high-level spells in order to keep spamming Arcanist exploits. Would I say the spell part of things are good? Not really. Spells have a mixed bag, like I said, but it can work. Because this is a full casting class, this can actually work, which is the big thing here. Now, what would I say this is viable for? I could see you getting one level in Unlettered Arcanist if you're a melee user, because obviously you can go for a Familiar, which would give you a +1 to AC, and then of course you got the Arcanist exploit, which gives you a +2 to armor. So if you're playing a melee user, this could be certainly something up your alley, especially if you're a Charisma user. Anything else? Really, Nature Mage is always a nice choice, I would say. If you're looking for, you know, Druidic spells, which has Bark Skin, this might be to your favor. Brown Fur Transmuter is definitely solely if you're going to be running with a group, because it's going to buff your allies immensely well. So 20 levels of Brown Fur Transmuter will be amazing. Beyond that, what else? White Mage, I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it is an option. I'm not going to say it's going to actually work with unfair difficulty, but it could certainly help you in core, at least enough, I would say. But, yeah, my personal opinion here is that Eldritch Font, I guess Eldritch Font is okay. The only thing I am concerned about is, of course, the Eldritch Surge, which requires a lesser restoration just to cure that, which is probably the most annoying thing. However, the trade-off for greater exploits that can basically gimp the enemy, or greater surge rather, gimping the enemy is always going to be nice, because forcing somebody to save twice is always going to be nice. And hell, if you're going to go for bot as well, that's going to be an amazing ability. It's basically just doubling your resources at that point, which does help the resource allocation problem with the Arcanist. But I mean, it really depends on you, but yeah. I would personally say Brown Fur Transmuter and a dip into Unlettered Arcanist is probably going to be your best bet, if you're playing unfair difficulty anyways. But I digress. That is the Arcanist. For next stream, the next time we do this, in... God, I forgot the series name. Character Creation Lite, we're going to be following on to the Bard. The Bard is a very interesting character, and it's going to be very fun, to say the least, because I personally love the Bard. I don't play them in this series for a number of reasons, but I do like playing them for fun. But I digress. I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope you guys enjoyed, you know, the allocation of what words. I hope you enjoyed my opinions on Arcanist. And next stream, we will be focusing on Bard. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. And without further ado, I'll see you guys later. Take care, and have a good day.